Now, the United States of America has officially begun the legal process of withdrawing from the North Atlantic Alliance. Today, a bill was submitted to the United States Congress regarding the withdrawal of the United States of America from the NATO military alliance. The bill states that NATO no longer serves the national interests of the United States, and therefore the United States should leave the alliance and redirect the freed-up funds to the development of America. And the author of this bill is a Republican congressman who is close to the White House. And now there are debates going on. On one hand, in Washington, they don't believe that such an initiative will get enough votes of support in Congress. But on the other hand, more and more experts are saying that the United States practically no longer considers itself a member of NATO. All their recent actions speak volumes about this, and as it turns out, it's also connected to the negotiations between the Americans and the Russians. The logic of the American peace plan regarding Ukraine, for example, actually implies the United States leaving NATO as a political entity. Experts called the wording in the peace plan strange, particularly the part that says, quote, "A dialogue between Russia and NATO will be conducted with the mediation of the United States." They pointed out that this means the United States admits it is not part of the alliance and can act independently. My name is Alexei Pecci. Let's discuss this topic in detail together, but before we start, I ask you to subscribe to this channel, like the video, and leave any comment you wish. Also, subscribe to my Telegram channel, Peachy News. The link to it is in the description of this video. There we publish breaking news as soon as it comes in. So, a bill has been submitted to the United States Congress about the United States of America leaving the NATO military alliance. The bill was submitted by Republican Thomas Massie, and he announced his proposal on the social network X. Let me remind you that Thomas Massie is known for demanding in 2024 that Joe Biden be impeached. That's why some experts now say that the bill doesn't have much chance of being approved. But don't jump to conclusions just yet, because some actions by Donald Trump's team already show that Washington, at the very least, wants to lower its status in NATO to a nominal status. And this specifically concerns the negotiations between the Americans and the Russians regarding Russia's war against Ukraine. Let's review everything step by step to avoid confusion. Congressman Massie believes that NATO was created to counter the Soviet Union, and if there is no Soviet Union, then there is no longer any need for NATO. Quote, "NATO is a relic of the Cold War. The United States should leave NATO and use that money to defend our own country, not socialist countries. Today I introduced Bill House Resolution 6508 to end our membership in NATO. And so Massie believes that NATO is very expensive for United States taxpayers, and that's why it's time to put an end to it and focus only on America's internal problems. Quote, "Since then, United States participation has cost taxpayers trillions of dollars and still carries the risk of involving the United States in foreign wars. And here's what's interesting. For the official notification to allies about leaving the alliance, Thomas Massie gives the United States president 30 days. The document notes that NATO no longer serves the national interest and national security interests of the United States. In addition, the bill states that the European NATO countries have sufficient economic and military potential to provide for their own defense. And it prevents the use of American taxpayers' money to fund the joint budgets of these organizations." And here's a post that appeared on the social network X just a few hours ago, which has already gained almost over 1 million views and sparked quite a heated discussion with opinions divided. Congressman, right now supporters of Donald Trump are actively backing him on this issue, but some are calling him a Russian bot. I noticed that the United States leaving the alliance still plays into the hands of Vladimir Putin. And here I'll make an interesting remark about these so-called Russian bots. Today, Senator Democrat Richard Blumenthal is one of the authors of the bill on 500% tariffs on Russian oil and other goods. He believes that United States President Donald Trump is abandoning Ukraine to its fate and forcing Ukraine to make unreasonable and unfair territorial concessions. And importantly, Blumenthal called for replacing Trump's envoys Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner in the negotiations with someone else, since both Witkoff and Kushner are clearly serving the interests of the Kremlin. Next, I will quote Blumenthal. "Witkoff and Kushner seem biased against Ukraine. I think Trump needs new envoys. Witkoff and Kushner seem to be on Russia's side instead of being impartial or objective negotiators. And the entire peace plan needs to be scrapped. They need to go back to the initial stage. At the same time, another senator from the Democratic Party, Jean Shaheen, believes that Ukraine should not be pressured to sign the agreement before Christmas. Recall, similar reports emerged earlier that Trump is pressuring Zelensky to sign a peace deal before Christmas. And so, according to Shaheen, Russia only responds to pressure from Europe and the United States, so more weapons should be given to Ukraine, and secondary sanctions should finally be imposed. Whatever Zelensky proposes, if it brings Putin to the negotiating table, I support it. We want to stop the killing. I'm not going to say what he should or shouldn't do. I'm just saying that Zelensky needs to be realistic in his approach. But honestly, Putin first and foremost needs to be realistic about what he's asking for. But let's get back to the bill about the United States leaving NATO. This bill is essentially a continuation of the ideas that emerged at the very beginning of Donald Trump's presidency. Even back then, John Bolton, Trump's former national security advisor, wrote about this. And here, of course, you could laugh at such an initiative from the Republican massy like, well, this is just too much. But Congress won't vote to leave NATO, so this bill will just end up gathering dust on the shelf. But I would say that such initiatives should still be taken seriously, because they are a measure of the mood of American society. If, in discussions on social media, the majority of Americans suddenly support such an initiative, Trump will push it further. And if not, you can always blame everything on crazy Thomas Massie. And I don't think so for no reason. After all, it's possible that the promise to weaken NATO as much as possible is part of a deal between the United States and Russia regarding the war in Ukraine. According to facts and experts, the United States no longer sees itself as a NATO member, and its actions make this clear. The logic of the American peace plan regarding Ukraine, for example, actually involves the United States withdrawing from NATO as a political entity, and this is very important. And the wording presented in the peace plan, in particular the quote that a dialogue between Russia and NATO will be conducted with the mediation of the United States of America, I find strange, but it has its own hidden meaning. Because such a step means that Washington puts itself aside as if in the role of an arbitrator and no longer considers itself a direct part of the alliance. And this is exactly what Vladimir Putin is tirelessly trying to test: America's commitment to NATO and the defense of Europe, and Trump is showing that this commitment has already been broken. As a result, the United States may not formally leave NATO, but it will definitely weaken its representation, which is essentially what Trump is doing right now. And we see that the United States is already withdrawing some troops from Europe, and Trump is urging Europe to prepare for the fact that they will be left on their own. The United States will still exist, but not as much as before. And to make my logic about this partial United States withdrawal from NATO clearer, I'll give a historical example that shows it's possible to leave NATO without actually leaving. As much of a play on words as that may sound, I'll explain now. In 1966, France under President Charles de Gaulle withdrew from NATO's integrated military structure. But it did not leave the political alliance itself. And it returned to the military structure only in 2009 under Nicolas Sarkozy, since it had always remained a full member of NATO. The withdrawal was connected to France's desire to have greater military independence and its own nuclear capability, and the return was due to the realization of the need for full participation in command structures, especially for European defense. Did this coincide with the change in the geopolitical situation in the world as a whole? So, for a long time, France seemed to be part of NATO, and on a political level, it never actually left. But in military terms, France left the alliance, meaning it had no military obligations to its allies, and French troops did not coordinate their actions with the troops of other NATO countries in any way. Formally, it was in NATO, but also not. Let me know if you're interested. I'll tell you more about how and why France left NATO, and how the whole process went. And let's do it this way. If there are 100 comments asking for an episode on this topic, I'll definitely make it. But in the context of this topic, I think you understand the analogy. In the next episode, I'll talk about how the White House has finally revealed all the details of the peace plan for Ukraine, which both Zelensky and Putin mostly agree with. That's it. The United States has actually offered Ukraine a Korean scenario with some nuances. So don't miss the next episode on this YouTube channel. Friends, I'll leave it at that for now. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments under this episode. Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you don't miss future episodes. If you want to support the work of this YouTube channel, if you found this episode interesting, you can do so with a donation or a paid subscription using the links and details provided. In the description of this video, it says exactly that. Support the Alexei Pichi channel. Choose any support format that is convenient for you. I will be grateful for any support from you. Sorry for the tautology. That's all for now. Take care of yourselves. Goodbye, everyone.